Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ridwanullah family. Jazakumullahu khair for tuning in to another episode of Ridwanullah TV show, your source for Islamic personal and professional development. I'm your host and life maximizer, Hussein Mahmoud, working to help you maximize every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah by the grace, will, and for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily, all praise and thanks are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator, owner, and sustainer, the one who deserves all worship without any associations or intermediaries. And may the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon the most esteemed leader and most honorable teacher, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, his family, his companions, and those who follow him until the day of judgment. Allahumma ameen. As you guys know, with the Ridwanullah TV show, we try to bring you brilliant minds who have, a little bit of different ideas that will help maximize our lives. And today is not an exception. It is actually the privilege and pleasure of mine to sit here with my brother Yussuf, Ibrahim. MashaAllah. Jazakumullahu khair for tuning in, for being here, or allowing me to come here. Because as you guys probably seen in the introduction, that I'm at his house. Alhamdulillah. The title of this is The Intellectual Perspective of Life. We're going to be touching on a lot of different topics of life. As he's a passionate individual, mashallah. That's the reason why I chose the topic. As a young individual, I see him to be passionate about a lot of things, in particular about the health and fitness, his deen. So many of the things that I feel like we're multi-passionate. That's my connection point to him. So before we get into the tea, inshallah, for the individuals who don't know you, would you kindly introduce yourself to them?
Of course, inshallah. So as Brother Hussein mentioned, my name is Yussuf. I am 25 years old and I grew up in Utah. I was born in Iraq, in northern Iraq, where there is a mixed minority base. And so I have some perspective that you might be able to benefit from and relate to, no matter where you are and who you are, where you are, where you're from in the world. So I was born in Iraq. I lived in as an infant. My family, my parents, actually fled to Turkey as a neighboring country on the northern border due to the conditions in Iraq in the early 90s and mid 90s due to war and things like that. And so my family fled to Ankara in central Turkey, and I lived there until the age of 4. And my parents, they went through some things, and they applied, at the United Nations and got refugee status, and they placed us here in Salt Lake City, Utah, because of the safety and because of other factors. Cost of living, Utah is generally a good environment to raise a family and things like that. Yeah. So I was raised here. I'm American essentially, and so I have not very much connection to my heritage and to my homeland. But I think that's something for any immigrant who's come here at a young age, like myself at 4 years old, or for someone who's come here at a later age, maybe in their teens or in their adulthood. There should be no excuse or no reason for us to try and not connect with our past and to help that so that we can align with the correct principles for our future. Because we need to know where we came from in order to know where we're going, and we need to know the history of our family, the history of our people, and so not so that we can be too proud, but so that we can be humble at the differences and the similarities between us, and that we can work towards helping one another, and not hurting one another, because that's one of the main issues, is that there's a superiority complex between different minorities and different peoples, and they have different allegiances and different mentalities in that way. So that's I grew up here, and I have I grew up with brothers, older brothers and a younger brother now, but I had no sisters, and I have both my parents. Alhamdulillah, they're both still here, so I can get advice from them and I can learn from them. And
In Utah?
In Utah. So my immediate family is here in Utah, and my larger family is mostly in Kirkuk city, northern Iraq, and also spread around the world, including Europe and Oceania in Australia and other places. But we're the only ones here, and maybe you're in a similar situation. You're only your immediate family maybe here, and that kind of creates an interesting situation where you don't know much about your aunts and uncles or grandparents or your cousins or things of that nature. So you have to try and reconnect. You need to try and make the effort to go and seek out your family around the world. And if you can do that, inshallah, it's something very beneficial and important. And I have my interests in life and the work that I do and the things I want to work towards, and we can talk about that. But I'm simply in this situation, and this is the opportunity that I've been given by Allah, subhanahu wa ta'ala, that we're all given different perspectives. We're given different places in this world and different people among us to befriend and to to develop relationships with, and to work towards a common goal. So I have my interests, and we can talk about that. But I hope that what we do talk about will stimulate some thought changes or some perspective that you can really you're not alone in some areas, and you might be different in some areas, but it's okay. We're all in this whole, we're all in the same area. So
for sure, Jazakallahu khair, and that's very important to have that introduction and that well-rounded introduction, mashallah. And the last thing that he mentioned that I like the most is that hope something that that he says and that I say, or that we both say, will give you a perspective in life that you didn't have before. That will ignite something in you to be able to push forward, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So truly appreciate you granting me this opportunity to interview you, because I know there's plenty more to come in the future, inshallah. So for you guys that saw the introduction that we were going to be putting in front of the video, Brother Yussuf made us some tea, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of what is it, a review? Is that what you call it?
How about a taste and a quick remark, huh?
Yeah, inshallah. So this is the tea. And what I learned from Brother Yussuf is you always have to have a little bit of water with it, somewhere right by, just in case it's too sweet or too strong, right?
Yeah, with coffee and tea, especially coffee, if it's dark coffee, then having water is good just for hydration, and sometimes the coffee can be overwhelming if it's black coffee, or Turkish coffee.
Alhamdulillah. I was telling him earlier, it makes me feel a little high class to have two different drinks. So I'll be doing this a little bit more, inshallah. Amazing. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. And as you mentioned, there's honey.
Yeah, so the honey is, some people like to put a sweetener in their tea or coffee. I mean, most people, I assume, but it's a strong flavor. Honey has a particularly strong flavor. So when you have, in this case, you have just black tea, Indian black tea, loose leaf, and you have rose petals, dried rose petals, and you have the honey. So with the honey, it's the overwhelming taste, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's actually, that's true. That's the one that's a little bit more dominant than the other ones.
Right.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah. But it's mildly strong. I like it.
Right. It's not too bitter. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not too.
And it's not too light either.
Right. And it's not too light. It's not like water.
Yeah. Exactly.
It cooked it boiled enough, but not too much.
Exactly. So Jazakallah khair for that. I appreciate it. I enjoyed the latte as well. So hopefully I can, share that delight with you some other time as well when I invite you, inshallah. So we're going to dive in a little bit deeper into different aspects of life, right? So one of the things that I've realized is one of your passions is health and fitness. Why is health and fitness so important to you?
Well, because everyone is subject to the same laws. Everyone is subject to the same principles when it comes to your overall physical shape and your overall physical abilities. Even though we have variation, we have changes between genetics. Every person goes through the same thing. You grow up, you're a child, and you see how kids behave and interact with each other when they're, let's say, one of the children are a little overweight, and you have another child. Most of them are in a normal range. They're not overweight, they're not underweight, they're just in a normal range. And then you have some that are very underweight, they're maybe very thin or skinny, if it's termed that way. So you realize those aspects of a person affect their behavior. It can affect their behavior, and it affects how they're treated or how their
self-esteem.
Yeah, or how they treat other people. And so once you become an adult, which is, for us, we know we become an adult as soon as we can be conscious of our decisions and their consequences. So we know roughly around the age of 13 to 15 that we can learn about the things that we can change in our life. We can learn about how we came here. Did our parents, did they try to be good in terms of feeding us wholesome foods? Maybe they were a little bit guilty of overfeeding us, and we became, unconditioned, we became overweight. And it's not to necessarily blame them, but it is to look at the reality and say, okay, I'm overweight, or I'm underweight, or I feel like I'm not nourished completely. You have to just you can make a decision. You can study. You might not be able to do everything right away. You might not be able to gain all of the knowledge that is required for a complete picture at 13, 14, 15 years old. Right. It's going to take, between the ages of puberty until you're roughly an adult, around 21 years of age, where you can you can form a complete picture, and you can take a complete approach to your health and fitness, and that's going to require it's going to require the nutritional side, the nutritional dietary aspect of the wholesome foods and things like that, and perhaps some supplementation if you want to do that. And then it requires actual exercise, whether it's light, moderate, or heavy exercise. And I mean, it's very important to me because alhamdulillah, I was given a good physique to start with and a good platform. So why would I waste, the potential to see? Why would we waste the potential to see the best form of ourselves? We don't need to be Bruce Lee. We don't need to be, a bodybuilder. Like that's one of my passions is to build the body, and I've only just begun. But now I have a bigger, more complete picture. And it took a while. Actually, for me, I understood, but I never implemented the nutritional side until now. Like just now, I'm just starting too. So, so it's important because you want to be when people look at you, you want them to perceive that you're healthy and that you're strong and that you're fit. You're not only fit to do physical requirements, but you're fit to be a leader. You're fit to be taken seriously. You're fit to be respected. You're fit to be seen with, to be all these things, all these good qualities. And when you have a good physique, and you can see that person has, let's say, this is one of the biggest things, is broad shoulders, and they have a small waist. That man is taken. More people are more impressed with that. There's an impression that's left, and everyone's genetics are different. Everyone's placement of bone and muscles are different. But there is general differences. And so the point is not to change your genetics, because you can't do something about something that you were given to by our master, Allah. But what you can do is work within the framework that you have, so that you are. First of all, you're respecting yourself. You're respecting this gift that Allah gave you. We can't expect to be filling our stomachs and taking our bodies to the extreme and becoming unhealthy and expect, that's sinful, But obviously we're all sinful. We all have our sins of choice, so let's not judge one another based upon our sin of choice.
Yeah.
Some people hide it better, and good for them. The better you hide your sins, the better you are, because you should hide them until you can release that burden and you can try to chisel away and get rid of those sins. But we need to take care of ourselves physically, because it would be really awesome if you looked really nice, and it would be really, you'd feel really poor if you looked really, really poor.
So it's an amazing to hear your perspective on the health and fitness. I started there because I feel like that's one of your biggest passions, and for people to kind of understand the different levels of health and fitness. What would you say are the most important lessons you've learned so far in your health and fitness journey? Because I know it's not, a one-time thing.
Right. I would say the most important thing is, once you've just begun your journey, let's say in most people's case, they are overweight, right? Some people, a smaller portion of people who want to be physically fit and muscularly developed and at a relatively low body fat that's healthy to maintain. If you're looking at someone who is on either side, whether overweight or underweight, and they want to become more in the middle, and they want to maintain a nice body and internal, your internal and your exterior body, because they're both affected by your nutrition and by your exercise, of course. So the thing is, you can gain knowledge, you can learn one thing at a time. Let's say I started learning about health and nutrition, I started looking into it myself and kind of asking to people that I looked at who would know more than me, that were mentors or people that I trusted with these things, like my mother. She was, mashallah, very knowledgeable. She has a chemistry degree. She wanted to be a civil engineer, actually. She was on her way towards that, and she had the degrees, but she became a mother, as so many do, which is, perfectly fine. But so you gain one piece of information. Let's say, okay, I need to remove all types of soda, all types of fountain drinks or drinks like that contain high fructose corn syrup. You learn about one thing and you say, okay, this ingredient or this types of food that this ingredient is common within, I need to remove that from my diet, And then you say, okay, I seriously, I'm considering, I need to consider changing my lifestyle, my eating style, because I have a heart problem, I have a heart condition, I'm almost getting diabetes, or you have any type of condition, you're not able to perform in all the aspects that you should be able to as a lean and efficient human being, and as a man. It's like, so you gain one piece of knowledge, no high fructose corn syrup. Okay, let me remove it from my diet. You're going to quickly find out that high fructose corn syrup is found in many products on the shelves, because you're looking at mainstream, large selling items in large grocery stores like Walmart and Target and this.
For mass consumption.
For mass consumption, right?
Yeah.
Because it's actually been reported that in a basic or mainstream grocery store, you have corn ingredient, just corn in one way or another, like corn flour, corn syrup, high fructose corn syrup, in like 3 out of 4 products.
3 out of 4?
3 out of 4. You pick up a can, you pick up a box of baking mix, you pick up cereal, has corn and all these derivatives of what they get out of corn. And corn itself is not bad, it's just genetically modified corn, And I'm not saying all GMOs are bad, but corn in particular is dangerous because of the pesticide kind of anti-pesticide properties that it has, or it basically, when they genetically modify these plants, that plant, as it grows into a full corn stock or whatever, it actually contains its very own pesticide from within the seeds, from within the corn kernels. If an insect tries to eat it, it dies. Right? The insect dies and it can't continue eating. So the yields, the amount of corn that they're able to produce increases, just like for many other types of plants. Some of the common genetically modified organisms, genetically modified plants in the United States include corn, cottonseed. So a lot of the shirts that are made from cotton are genetically modified, and they can actually have adverse effects on people who are hypoallergenic or hypoallergic or whatever. Cottonseed, berries. Berries are sprayed with a lot of pesticides. They're not necessarily the most genetically modified, but other genetically modified plants include things like zucchini and a lot of the staple items. But my point is that once you learn one ingredient should be kind of strictly taken out of your diet. And if you look at anyone who's a professional and who has a well-rounded knowledge of health and well-being, who is a natural doctor. So you have an MD, which is a medical doctor, right? Yeah. And then you have a natural doctor. I don't know the exact title for them, but they actually have to specialize in a field which is more holistic. They might not give you a prescription for all of your problems, Yeah. They're trained for that, like a medical doctor, but they went through extra training to say, okay, if you have a condition, let's say diabetes or high blood pressure or this or that, look to eat these foods, eat these certain foods, put this as part of your diet. So they're kind of like your nutritionist or a dietitian, but they're a doctor. They have even further knowledge, and they're saying, don't eat this. What are you eating? What are you consuming? Yeah. Stop consuming that. Maybe you're consuming too much dairy. Consume a little bit less. Or so actually they give you advice which is practical, and you can actually you can use it, but finding a natural doctor is not as easy as it looks because there's not as many as there are MDs. Yeah. So, but what I'm trying to say is that if you look at people in that field who are specialized, like natural doctors and holistic doctors, they're not eating anything that has genetically modified corn, cotton seed, hydrogenated oils, all these types of things. They have maybe at minimum they have like 10 ingredients that they're not consuming at all in that form that it's mass produced. Yeah. They're like,
why is that?
Because just as an example, I like cottonseed. When they are pulling the cotton, the genetically modified cotton with the tractors and everything, they have leftovers, and from those leftovers they can actually they're the seeds, the leftover genetically modified seeds. Yeah. They can take them and they can use it as feed for cows, for those cows that are kept in stalls, and they give them dry dead food, right? Yeah. So they give them the cottonseed seeds, and they actually looked at their study shows that it's linked to the cows getting cancer, and some of them outright dying from too much consumption. Because yes, like the average life. Yeah. The average life of a cow, not because of it might be because of like they're just being slaughtered a lot, but their life is shortened dramatically. A cow in captivity in a mainstream farm in the United States has an average life of 4 or 5 years, whereas a cow who is producing milk on grasslands, on a grass-fed diet, right, which is predominantly grass-fed, and they have like the pasture, they have a whole entire pasture to graze on. They're free to roam, they're free roaming, and they're only kept natural environment. They're only kept in a cage, or they're only kept in a stall or a barn or whatever when it's like winter time, and then in the springtime they're allowed to go out. And there's a video actually showing a cow jumping up and down because he's so happy. He's like looks like a dog actually, because he's so excited to get out in the springtime to eat the grass, and he's a grass-fed cow. He's jumping up and down. So their average life is something like 2 or 3 times more than that, like 10 to 15 years. Yeah. So
we could be slowly killing ourselves with the food that we eat.
So we are slowly poisoning ourselves. People think it's residual effects. Yeah. It's over time. These ingredients and these products are they're destroying the natural enzymes in your stomach. You know, they're destroying your ability to process food at all. There's actually a condition called leaky gut syndrome.
Yeah.
And what happens is people are consuming too much grain. They're consuming too much bread, and the bread is not like 4 ingredients as it should be: water, flour, salt, and yeast. That's what it takes to make bread, 4 ingredients. But what do they have? They have like 10, 15, 20 ingredients.
Right.
Because they need
It's
to
like
add
a whole paragraph.
Exactly. They need to add preservatives. They need to add this agent and that agent, preserving agent. You know,
extend the shelf life.
exactly. And so what happens is when people are consuming that, you know, too often, they are destroying they're destroying their enzymes in their body, and you're retaining more fat because that kind of food is not natural.
Yeah.
It's all those preservatives and all of those extra additives are actually not allowing you to burn as your metabolism should. It's actually it's having negative effects. You know, whether you're retaining more fat or you know, you're going to have health problems because of that residual effect. You know, so there are many things. Okay, you learn about one thing and you learn to remove it, like high fructose corn syrup. You want to remove that from your diet.
Yeah.
I started doing that when I was 15. I have not drinking a Coca-Cola
15?
or Pepsi. I think I slipped up a few times, but I drank the Mexican Coca-Cola, you know, like the imported that has sugar instead of corn syrup, right? But as far as like corn syrup drinks, I haven't drinking a corn syrup drink in like 10 years. So I was able to remove one ingredient, but over the next one bad ingredient, and that does wonders. Because it's one thing that you're consuming over time that is destroying you. Like
it's accumulating.
It's accumulating, you know. And and actually, if you look at Pepsi, Cola, all the different types of drinks like that, like sodas, the acidity, that carbonation and the acidity, the caramel coloring and different things in there, as you're consuming it a few times a day, what it's actually doing is it's actually eating your calcium from your bones. It's actually taking them.
And what is?
It's destroying your bones.
What?
Sugary drinks and like sodas, especially ones that are that have. I don't know if it's not necessarily the carbonation, but it's a combination of the acidity of the drink and there's an ingredient in there which is causing that. But that's definitely been proven. You know that those there's like a phosphate or something in there. But anyways, you know, sodas take away the nutrition, the density of your bones. Your bones become less dense, you know, which is not something you want at all until you're like, you know, you're reaching retirement age in your old years.
So it's starting a little earlier for most of us because of the drinks that we choose to drink.
Exactly. So if you can remove one thing, then, well, after a few months, your interest may peak again. You want to learn something else. Like 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line, 10 years down the road, you're going to know so much about what you should be putting inside of your body and what you shouldn't. So you're going to, honestly, you're going to be like in the top 10% of people in terms of overall health and in terms of fitness and in terms of muscularity and in terms of just how your body looks and how you feel.
And
because you're removing all of the things. In fact, the funny one, something I'd like to mention is, you know, when my mom, when we first came here, I'm not joking. When we were on the airplane, she told me this. Obviously, I don't remember, but she's told it to me multiple times. As soon as she got on the airplane to come, like a U.S. Airlines to come in to New York and then to come to Utah, as soon as she started eating the airline food, she said, "I have headaches. You know, I'm getting headaches, and I have like I don't know where these headaches are coming from." Before that, it was very rare in Turkey and in Iraq because their processed foods were almost non-existent.
Right. And that's the biggest difference between the overseas countries and America, or you know, these developed countries.
Right. Yeah, the more developed, you know, they progress in so many ways, but they
digress in other.
exactly. And so she was wondering, I'm getting these headaches, I'm developing these headaches, and so now start to take ibuprofen and like pain.
All these other,
and those are very, very seriously dangerous in the long term. In fact, the FDA just released a warning for ibuprofen. That they have a label that actually I think it was just a few months ago, they put an extra warning on there that this, you shouldn't take it long term. It should be used in, minimal amounts. But there's some people, and especially women, because they have their, they have menstruation and they have these things, and to take care of that pain, they take a painkiller like ibuprofen or whatever, acetaminophenes, but the actual risk and the actual like damage that it causes, internal bleeding, and there's all these liver problems. It's very, very serious, and there's people who've been taking it for years because of their pain. But what's causing their pain is the food. It has to be a large part of what's causing their pain and their overall problems and their inability to have energy throughout the day and things like that. It's not just lack of activity. Maybe they don't have the best relationship with their spouse or the best family relationship, so they feel sad, and they become in
stress.
Exactly. The stress causes different hormones to rise, which cause further damage.
With the bad nutrition.
Right, and with the bad nutrition. So if you're eating, if you have no awareness of what you're eating on American shelves, then you are consuming toxic poison, and everything has some toxicity, everything has some poison, even natural foods, even every plant and every vegetable, everything has an immune system. And actually, some foods that are raw, like raw broccoli, raw cauliflower and others, it's actually better to eat them when you cook them or when you steam them, because they're actually, when you're eating them, they actually have a pushback against your system because they want to stay alive. They're actually, when you eat them in a raw form, they tend to not.
That's why it feels a little bit more.
A little like your stomach is upset. There's like some gas, in gastrointestinal problems. Like if you eat like a lot of raw, and I'm not picking on like the raw vegan people who like to choose that as their lifestyle, but it's been shown that cooking your vegetables allows the enzymes within the vegetable. It allows the cells to soften and to break, so that when you eat it, you're actually absorbing the nutrients. But when you're eating it raw, they have a strong tendency not to want to be absorbed, because they're fighting what the person that's eating them. They're creating a natural immune response. But again, you're not. We as children of Adam, we're not able to change everything in our life at once. We're not able to be perfect all at once. We can't have all the knowledge all at once. I mean, Adam alayhi salam, he had the knowledge of essentially everything on earth, right? Is it not? Did he not teach his children, eat this and don't eat this, stay away from this? Because I'm not actually sure, because the scripture or the literature or whatever behind Adam alayhi salam is not too extensive, So when you have the ability to just give someone a little something, to tell the person that you care about, the person that you love, hey, you know what? You should be very careful about how much ibuprofen you're taking. You should be careful about these painkillers, because
help them with these natural remedies.
Exactly. There's doctors and the healthcare system as a whole, for hospitals and healthcare practitioners, are absolutely necessary, and we need them for many cases, for emergencies and for non-emergencies. But I believe, for me, I think 80% of your conditions you can treat on your own. You just need the knowledge, you need the tools, you need to spend in the correct way. You need to spend in the way of good food, right? Clean food. It doesn't mean everything has to be organic or non-GMO.
Right.
But you should look out for certain foods to stay away from, right? Like corn. And introduce new foods into your diet, you know, because this is affecting you as an individual. It's affecting your spouse, your husband or your wife, your children, right?
Yeah.
Because your children have no choice
But to
in that
follow
matter.
in the good or bad steps that you're creating for them.
Exactly. I mean, what, you know, imagine how upset they're going to be, you know, those children when they grow up to be, into puberty and they realize what their parents did to them, you know.
Yeah.
Or so if they're in that category of like extreme excess, you know, or whatever, they'll be very upset with them.
And it's important to keep focusing on health. I have one more question. We're going to take a couple of shifts, and then we're going to work on concluding bi'idhnillahi ta'ala with some final questions.
Okay.
But I want to get to a little bit of other rapid fire questions where to kind of cap the health part off.
Right.
My biggest struggle is disciplining myself, where, you know, certain times in my life I feel like I'm on, you know, working out, diet, running at least a mile a day. All of these elements are going good because I've strictly disciplined myself. And then, you know, somebody says, why are you so strict on yourself? You know, just eat, you know, or do this, and then I'll fall off and just completely like pick out, for lack of a better term, on a lot of things. Do you struggle with disciplining yourself in terms of health and fitness? If not, what would you advise me? If so, what have you seen to be useful for you in terms of disciplining yourself?
You know, yes, I have struggled. You know, absolutely. I've struggled with everything that anyone has struggled with. You know, health and fitness or personal life. You know, controlling emotions, controlling, you know, anger and happiness and joy and regret and all these things. You know. But in order to, we have to look at the long term. And we have to be honest with ourselves. And the statement goes, you know, don't write a check you cannot cash. Right. You know, because
how does that relate to the discipline?
Sure. So we make statements to ourselves. We make resolutions. I'm going to do this. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to gain weight and muscle. I'm going to change this part of my life and never return to that evil act. Or I'm going to take upon this good act and be, you know, the best at it. We have to be honest about taking small steps and small procedures and small, notes over the years. And so how can we actually have an effective long-term strategy? Because everything is long-term essentially. Right. In order for something to be sustainable, you have to form those habits. You know. So
just establishing these small habits rather than starting off way ahead.
Rather than, let's say, okay, we're not going through a boot camp necessarily, you know. Right. It's not like we're having a personal trainer saying, okay, here's your diet and nutrition side. Everything's laid out in a graph, and here are all your calories and all of your macronutrients, the large things that make up calories, the fats, the proteins, and the carbohydrates, you know. And then you have the exercise aspect with the trainer or whatever, and going through the training program, you know. This trainer and this nutritionist is giving you a whole package, and they are pushing you, and a coach is pushing you in a 2-month, 3-month, 6-month program.
So there's not a specific timeline.
So
for us particularly,
you can do it for yourself. Yeah.
But is that a tool to help us stay disciplined, or a tool that we should, like, creating a time frame?
Right. We do. You're right. We have to have specific goals. We have to say, okay, in my case, let's say I want to reach a certain weight. I cannot say, okay, I think I want to be, I want to gain 10 pounds, you know, and hopefully mostly muscle and not too much fat. But I can't just be thinking like, I have to be specific and say, okay, no, my goal is I want to gain 30 pounds, but mostly muscle and very little fat. How am I going to do that? Your goal might be different. I want to lose 10 pounds. I want to lose 20 pounds, and I want to get stronger and healthier. Because the thing is, the scale, you know, when you weigh yourself and you see, once you've implemented the correct calorie restriction or calorie intake, surplus of calories, the scale is not the perfect measure of what's actually going on. What's actually going on is the composition of your muscle and your fat and your body is changing.
Yeah.
And the fat that's being lost when you're losing weight is changing into muscle. It's actually feeding the muscles as long as you're exercising and doing resistance training or weightlifting.
Yeah.
You're actually transforming your body, so your weight might actually stay relatively the same or decrease a little bit because it's transformed into muscle, and muscle is heavier than fat.
Yeah.
So the only way to have a sustainable approach is you come to a point in your life when you know it's time to take a serious to make a serious decision and to follow through with it, right?
Yeah.
As I said, I've been learning about. I used to go to the gym, Gold's Gym, and with my brothers. They were bodybuilders, my two older brothers. So I learned workouts from them, and I learned nutrition, but I never really implemented it. I only did a little. I was just there to be social with them, to be in a social environment in the gym, and to kind of do a little bit of weightlifting and exercise and basketball and this and that. But it never became a serious thought and a serious discipline until there were maybe some remarks that were made by people that I really cared about and loved, and they said, you are in very nice shape, mashallah, but you need some work here, and they give me criticism, and they're a person that
Your
I loved. And someone else, even let's say a woman in your life or a girl, and they're not, you hardly know them, but you care about them enough that if they say something, you're like, that was serious enough of an impact to say, man, I start now. And that was a year ago.
Yeah.
So I started being a little bit more serious with the nutrition and with the exercise, but only recently, very recently, did I
put it together.
The only way you're going to change anything is to have an exact account of what's going on. You have to have data. You have to have, what am I eating?
Yeah.
How many calories is it? How much protein, fat, and carbs,
Right.
And then you have to create a plan for yourself. It's not very hard. You just need, we can all teach ourselves because we have so many resources. We really don't have an excuse to be ignorant about our health and wellness and about so many things in the world.
Yeah.
So once you have the data and you've been keeping track of something, let's say for a week or 1 month, you know what's going on, then you can change it. If you don't know what's going on, you can't change anything.
Right.
So
you have to keep aware of the numbers
exactly
to be able to get the results that you're after.
Exactly. So to be honest, for many people, they're going to learn little by little, and it doesn't mean they're going to be able to start with something, start a process of change in their life that's going to be sustainable. You have to have that mentality, and you have to be willing to continually learn, and sacrifice in your life. Just like for anything, you need to sacrifice. For anything good in life only comes through sacrifice and through discipline and things like that. So, but people need an example. I can tell you, you should be healthy. You should try to be healthy. You should try to maintain your body and your maintain your psychology. Your psyche. You should maintain and improve. But sometimes they need an example. They need to be able to say, okay, I'm taking this advice from this person, and I will take it because I see that they are a good example. They're
they're implementing.
But you might not know me, but that's okay. All that matters is that this maybe ignites or sparks some curiosity, so that you research people who are in the fitness industry or in the health and nutrition industry, doctors. Look them up on YouTube and look them up on their websites and just read. Just as Allah told us, our master, our judge. First thing He told us is to read, whether it be our deen or in the dunya. We need to read. No one can achieve positive change in their life without gaining knowledge first.
Right.
Just.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's probably a whole different topic that we can dive deeper into.
Exactly.
But inshallah, probably for...
excuse me, it's kind of like when, one of the crazy anomalies or things that were written into the Bible that before, what was it, in Exodus, that before there was, like, the way that life was introduced, there was life, and then there was light, or something like that. Like life was there before the light came. But I can't remember exactly, but that's not the way life forms. First, you have to have water and light, and everything has to come together in the correct way.
Yeah.
But there was a contradiction where one thing, the light was not present, but there was life, and then the light came, and it's just that's not how life works. It's impossible, So just like in your journey, without gaining knowledge and without sacrificing and without admitting you don't know, then that's the first step. And then you seek knowledge, and you'll be able to change, because
just figure out all these elements.
once you know something, you can never unknow it. That's why we as Muslims, we might want to live, sometimes we want to be heedless, and we want to live a lifestyle of people who don't have a connection with God, with Allah. And whether they're Muslim or of any other deen, some of them still have a connection with Allah, they're just not complete. They might not be complete with their knowledge in order to become closer to Allah, and only Allah has the keys for that. But my point is, again, that seek knowledge and read. Read. If there's anything in your life that you want to change, you need to read about it. And you need to find someone or a resource or someone who can teach you, who can guide you.
Find different resources to learn.
Right.
And that's very important in any journey. How let's dive into Deen. I think that's our connection point, right?
Yes.
You're born Muslim. Were you always Islamic? I know this is a tough question to answer, but what I mean by this is, even though we are born Muslim, we don't necessarily walk down that path, and there's a turning point.
Right.
So whichever area you'd like to start with, inshallah.
Inshallah.
It's fair game.
So, as children, we see our parents performing the rites of Islam. We see them performing, prayer. They teach us, They tell us about the stories. I was told the stories about, the prophets, and may Allah be pleased with all of them, or have peace upon all of them. And then you actually, when you hear the stories as a child, and you're able to understand, when you're like 7, 8, 9 years old, you're able to understand, Prophet, Yunus alayhi salam, and Prophet Yussuf alayhi salam, and Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and Prophet, like this is what they went through, and that was their, they tell you about their story, and you're so happy because your father or your mother is telling you, and they're in front of you, and they're talking to you, and they're sharing the story with you. It's like when you're a child and you're in school, and the teacher is reading you a book. It's so amazing. It's like you're living it, because your imagination, and you have no corruption, and you're just learning, and you develop a love and a connection to the storyteller, right? To your father, to your mother, to your teacher, to your, and you develop a love for the prophets. You develop a love for Allah's way. You develop a love for His chosen servants, So, for me, alhamdulillah, I developed that love, that initial connection to Allah's servants and to the truth that Allah has revealed. What happened, I came here. My father taught us, well enough. I can't say he was didn't teach us much, but I was not taught in a very
like the strict way
environment, right?
Yeah.
I didn't get schooling or anything like that.
Yeah.
I did go to Sunday school in Masjid Al-Nur, in the late 90s, maybe 99 or 2000, perhaps a little bit later, into the early 2000s, 2004, 2005. So I went for a few years, and for me it was a social place as well, and the house of Allah. So you developed a love in the heart. I developed a love in my heart for the house of Allah. It was such a peaceful and such a place where you felt you could, it's almost like you're not even in the world.
Yeah.
When you're in Allah's masjid, you feel like you're not even in this world. You just feel peaceful, and like your troubles are gone for just a moment,
Yeah. And what do you love about the Deen?
I would say what I love about the Deen is that no matter how much we fail, we have succeeded. As long as we return to Allah, as long as we make tawbah and we make istighfar, then we repent.
That's a big blessing. That's a big blessing.
So no matter how badly we fail, we know that we have something, a gift that it's like you know, you can't hold it, you know, you can't.
You just gotta
You
release
can't
that
give it to
negative
anyone.
energy.
Yeah, you just.
I mean, some people are because they're kind of like, you know, taking that negative energy off on people. But within the same token, you know, when you have your kind of mind frame, you don't want to dump that on people, right? So even though some people do.
You know, it's so important. It's so important.
Yeah.
How we follow the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because we are setting an example, you know, and the deen is manners.
Yeah.
I believe the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned many times that manners is what constitutes your deen as an individual. You know, someone with really good manners, you know, you start to like that person. You want to be close to them. You know, you befriend them. You know, and you just know that they have a good deen, especially when they're practicing the rites and rituals of Islam, and they have good manners. They are a good example. They are a good one person to follow. You know, and that's great for finding someone. You know, finding a wife, someone with really good manners. You know, that's something I would, you know, I'm in that place of my life.
What's your biggest challenge in your deen? I'm putting you on the spot, Yussuf.
Biggest challenge in the deen, I would say, is actually the biggest challenge is to make the right choice when you're at your weakest point. When you're tired and it's nighttime and you need to pray before you sleep, or you need to wake up. You know, I know that seems like very basic, but it's
no,
true.
that's huge for me even. I realize how truthful that is.
Right, because Allah did create, you know, the night for sleep, you know, and it's optimal that we sleep during that time period, and we will have all the strength and the energy to do everything it takes during the daytime, you know. And unfortunately, the lifestyles that we live, or the current time that we live in, it's very easy to get distracted and to stay awake longer, to harm ourselves, and to hurt our potential to get closer to Allah. I've gotten further and further away from Allah because I tend to stay awake, you know, because it's a nice peaceful time at night. You can think, you can develop plans, you can think to yourself, you know, and you can hang out, you can, you know, be with your brothers or this or that. But it's taking away from the most vital aspect of your deen, which is the salat, you know. And so absolutely the toughest part about my transformation through this Islamic journey is to establish the salat as they're supposed to be, because they fix everything else. You know, as long as you have good manners and you're building your knowledge, even if it's slow. If you establish the salat, you know, then that is the pathway. If it's not established, you know, that's my struggle. You know, I think for most people.
Alhamdulillah, I think that's very true. Even as you're reflecting on a lot of these points, I feel like that's a huge part of my challenge as well. You know, so alhamdulillah, you know, it's just a matter of working on overcoming that for all of us. Before we go on the final lap, I know before we spoke, you told me that you started a business. Mind sharing what that business is, kind of, you know, the highs and the lows and what you learned from it?
Sure. So before I answer that, I would just like to wrap up the thought from before. So I grew up in an Islamic environment. My parents taught me well enough so that I could take over when I had the consciousness after puberty. But through puberty, through the age of 13, 14, until 19 years old, I was not practicing, because I don't mean to put parents on the spot, but there is a responsibility upon parents, and especially the father, to implement, you know, one of the basic rules, right? That I just learned about a few months ago, and I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. And it's so amazing, you know, it's so real. The first 7 years of a child's life, you're a child, your daughter or your son, let them play. just be kind to them, be there for them, don't harass them about the deen, anything, because they don't need to be. They don't need to have any fear put in them at 7 years old, under 7. When they reach 7, between 7 and 14, teach them. Teach them as much as you can, about the deen. And not only that, teach them about, martial arts. Teach them about how to cook. Teach them about
other beneficial skills.
So many things that you can. Anything that you, as a, don't shut them out of your life. Don't as a parent. If you have multiple languages, teach them all of your languages. You have to
push them beyond their comfort.
You have to push them, but be obviously gentle and loving and caring.
Right.
And when they are 14, from 14 to 21, now
that's when they're hitting puberty.
Yeah, you befriend them. You are there. You are right next to them. Because you've befriended them, you've been nice to them as a child. Their perception of you is that you're a loving, good example. When you taught them so much of everything you know, they're like, I got all my knowledge, mashallah, from my father and my mother. Everything I know, so much of what I know, didn't come from my teachers, or didn't come from my daycare, my caretaker, didn't come from media and all these things, that they should be restricted in those first 14 years, definitely.
Yeah.
It came from my parents, and they were loving and caring and thoughtful enough to do that for me, to sit there with me and teach me. And then when they reach adulthood at 21 years old, fully mature, essentially young youth, then they will trust their mother and father, for advice and for guidance and for encouragement and all these things. They won't run away from you. They trust you. You've built that trust.
Right.
If we can't build that trust, we will always have a doubt or maybe some type of hatred, in fact, towards people who either were abusive or there was not enough. You feel like they
didn't give
you all the things that they had.
Yeah.
It's like, as you want to improve upon each generation, right?
Yeah.
So there's all these things that you have as a parent, your language and your knowledge, but I have none of it. How sad of a situation is that, where you don't even have those things that is so beneficial. Like, imagine being able to speak Arabic fluently. You know how beneficial that is for memorizing, for understanding, and someone who doesn't have it, like myself, I don't speak the Arabic language. I know no Arabic. I know the alphabet, just the basic hellos. It's like I was, I didn't receive that. So that can cause some anger, it can cause some issues. But we have to get past that, and we have to say, okay, you know what? It's now my responsibility to do whatever I can, to learn as much as I can, as a man, so that I can do what's right, because as we know, we are chained to our families, especially as a father, we are chained to our spouse and to our kids, and so I would say, we all kind of, a lot of us that are born Muslim, we completely get lost. We go through middle school, we go through high school, and we do all the things, or we're protected from certain things. Allah may have protected some from certain acts and certain sins, but we are maybe got into other things that we're like, okay, that's the past, and I don't need that anymore. I didn't need that stimulus. I don't need that, rush or whatever. I need to focus on purification, purifying everything we can, so that, and strengthening ourselves, not just in your intellect and with your job and with your career, strengthen your body, strengthen your mind, strengthen your spirit, so that if you are reaching the age that you want to get married, you're going to be a man that, that, as the saying goes, like tears of joy. When you see your wife and how she treats your children, tears of joy. When you see how your father takes, when the wife sees how the husband is treating her and treating the kids, or how he leaves to work and how he shows respect and love and admiration towards his wife, they're so happy that they have tears of joy, And this was a series that was released by Islamic Guidance on YouTube, their YouTube channel, and they just had a whole entire marriage series. You know, so like they already put out like 8 videos or 6 or 8 videos about before marriage, during marriage, with the kids, husband, wife. You know, so it's very important for the youth to learn about their rights, and you know, before they do it. It doesn't mean, you know, you're gonna have a perfect marriage or whatever, you know, but it means
it leads you on a good path.
Right, and anything that happens is for a Muslim is from Allah's mercy. You know, as we know, sometimes we can have a train wreck, but you know, we got something from it. You know, after the train wreck, you know, there's you know, you move on and you
collect yourself
pick up the pieces,
and learn
right.
to be stronger moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. You know what to look out for, what to avoid. You know.
Alhamdulillah, that's very true. And
I don't want to conclude, man. This is just, you know what I'm saying? I just feel like we're just warming up, bro.
You know, honestly, if it wasn't for like time restriction, you know, I'd be able to just sit here and just chat. I mean, obviously, beautiful environment, beautiful conversation, you know, beautiful brother, mashallah. Just an amazing opportunity to sit here and connect with you, man. You don't get this too often in the hustle and bustle, and I think that's one of the most important lessons that I've learned from doing these interviews, you know. It's like sometimes you think you know somebody, but unless you sit down with them and interview them and ask them deep questions, you know, it's an important lesson. I think, you know, if you're not doing it already, I'd encourage you to start doing that. You know, it'll be interesting to kind of watch your progression and how you'll go about things, inshallah.
Inshallah, and I appreciate it likewise. I'm honored, you know, and we're blessed to be among one another and to seek out to help and to build and to grow with each other, you know. And I want to answer the question about the business.
Inshallah.
You know? So,
and I think that's where we're going to kind of cap it off for today, and then I'll ask you some of the last 3, 4, 5 questions, inshallah, to conclude.
Okay, so I recently. Outside of work, outside of just the day-to-day, you know, working, punching in the clock and receiving the paycheck, you know, I decided, okay, I want to jump from the position of an employee to the position of a business owner, right?
Yeah.
And I realized how difficult it is and how you have to be so involved, and you have to be entirely committed to the process, but you also have to have the investment. You also have to have, whether that's coming from you or other parties, you know. So what I ended up doing was I had a little investment potential from my
investment in terms of a business, or just an investment with you taking your capital, putting it into a different business?
Building my own business. Okay. So investing from my own savings, and putting it into that, into the idea and into
which business did you start, if you don't mind me asking?
So it was and it just got off its feet. You know, it's basically we called it, you know, Salt Lake City's The Buzz. So it was basically a media production company. Okay. So we're talking about content creation for businesses in the Salt Lake City, you know, Valley area. We're talking about producing videos for advertisement, for, you know, if they want to showcase, you know, their store or like their product, we can create a video that's visually stimulating and exciting.
Kind of like an advertisement.
Exactly.
But more content based.
Exactly. So creating professional video. Because in reality, a professional video from advertisers, you know, agencies and such, for a business, it's quite expensive. Really, like 30-second to 1 minute video that's
top of the line
is anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 with animations and things like that. But amateur kind of people can do it for you for much less, you know, 500 or 1,000, 2,000, you know. But the skill level.
What was the higher end amount?
It can be 5, 10, 20,000.
Okay.
But that's obviously the highest. But more realistically, a few thousand up to 10,000. Yeah. And that's for specific large companies and things like that. But for smaller operations, you have to, sometimes we did it for free, you know. It was just, hey, we want to show you what we can do.
Yeah. And this is just you, or you had partners?
I had people working with me, you know. I had people who can edit, you know, and they are cameramen, right?
Yeah.
And videographers, as they're known. And they also edit, you know. And then there's the business aspect, which is like where I would have to go in and talk to a business and approach them and say, hey, we'd like to make a video, you know, we can do it for free. And for the first few times, you know, you pick a place that looks very nice, very aesthetic, like a barber shop or a coffee shop or whatever, and you say, hey, we'd like to make this video for you, and we can give it to you to use on your social media.
Yeah.
And we'll use it too on our platform as part of our portfolio.
Right.
And say, this is what we've done, you know.
Yeah.
And then eventually you can start charging, because
you've had the background of it.
So, but I quickly realized that what that would lead to, in terms of this particular band of you know, people I was working with, and I'm no judgment, you know.
Yeah.
But it was going to lead, perhaps, you know, and we didn't get anywhere near that stage. We were just in infancy stage, to be perfectly honest. We were
just starting off.
Just starting.
Yeah.
And that lasted about 6 months, you know. But what I saw, which I was torn between, making a decision, because what it would eventually lead to is there are things like events and concerts and gatherings, males and females, alcohol, perhaps, you know, sales, and music, and all these different things. But
a lot of these un-Islamic elements.
Exactly, un-Islamic elements, which I could not partake of. But there were other elements which were halal, like local businesses, restaurants, you know, things like that, like gardens, and like just local projects or whatever, and like filming them, you know, kind of promoting them and getting maybe a cut out of it in some way or another. And then there was going to be an app that was involved, you know, and how to make it profitable, you know. The goal was to be, when you're a part of something that is so attractive, you know, seeking fame, money, and popularity and all these things, it's very, very easy to be taken by that current and to fall, you know, and you're changing things about yourself that you shouldn't change, you know. Being shy, being caring, you know, not disrespecting people and putting, you know, those are all good qualities. But when you become, you know, perhaps
a media personality
that wants to get there fast, you know, or
there's some shortcuts the shortcuts
are the sacrifices and the compromises of your character, and that's unacceptable, you know.
So that was a part of the high and the low.
That was the high and the low.
What was the low point?
The low point would be when you're kind of right in the middle, and you're maybe a few months in, and you know this is not what's going to. This is not how it's going to go. I'm the end of the road is not me.
It's not where I want to go.
You know, and my.
I think it's like avoiding the midlife crisis before you get there, right?
So you're in the middle, and you're kind of like all of the excitement has faded away, and you're just left with, well, you're just making excuses to justify the continuation of that sin, you know, or that potential sin. So I'm very happy that it didn't go to that place, because the signs are so clear. You know, it's kind of like, it's just very clear. You know, we have to start using our gut. We have to start using our intuition to say, you know, this person is good for me in my life. Please come into my life, and let's, you know. And then you have to look at other people and say, there's a lot of you that is good, but there's parts of you that is tragic for me. We create a tragedy. So let's just keep it strictly social in this realm. We'll play together. Yes, keep it at arm's length.
Yeah, let's not get too close where you're kind of corrupting the life direction that I have.
Right, exactly.
Perfect. And I think the thing that you're reminding me of right now that you did, that alhamdulillah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed me to do as well, is knowing where to put your ladder on, right? Like which direction to head towards. I see so many people that I work with, or that work with me, or that are doing so many different types of businesses, that they're working so hard and climbing the ladder that they don't realize that their ladder is actually on the wrong building until you know, until, and some of them tell me, you know, bluntly that I know I'm climbing the wrong building, but I have to get to the top anyway. And I'm like
this is my only way right now.
Yeah.
You know, they don't see another way.
Yeah, and I think that's the most important lesson that I see that you've learned, that you know, in my journey to wherever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking me, is that I'm doing is just, you know, not climbing up a building or having this ladder against this building because somebody else expects me to, or the peer pressure, or whatever.
Or here's the formula, you know?
Yeah.
There's part formulaic,
Yeah.
there's part formula, and then there's part spirit, there's part, you know, this is what
Right.
brings out the emotion in me.
Right. This is what gives me a sense of peace to sleep at night, rather than, and I think that's where a lot of people are stuck. So
it's okay to be part technical, to say this is formulaic. That's why conservatives, the conservative mind, you know, the Republican conservative mind, for the most part, is different than the liberal and democratic mind, which is in order to bring about new ideas and a new formula, like a new company or new business or a different change of strategy, you get the liberals and the artistic people, because they're using a different part of their brain. It's dominant. And so they create ideas and they invent. And the conservative people, they run the business. They say the liberals start businesses and the conservatives run it.
Yeah.
So it's
the more the artistic point of view versus the scientific point of view.
Right, they need to come together.
Yeah.
You know, that's why when you work with people, you can see some of them are more emotional. You know, some of them are a little bit like less emotional. You know, and they're just about like you know. So you need to have
the balance
people,
between the two.
both types of people, right?
And that's true. And I think more the conservative individuals are more prone to climbing the ladder regardless.
Right.
Right.
Right. Going, you know, on the hamster wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
because they'll eventually make it. It's going to take a while, but they know the formula.
Yeah.
You know.
But then, you know, the emotional capacity of what they're going to be feeling throughout and at the end is going to be similar to a train wreck.
Right. Whereas the artistic people, they're up and down.
Right.
You know, they're like comics and artists and people who, you know, do this or that, who create, who develop.
Yeah.
You know, they're kind of like really up and down as well.
Yeah.
So you need to have a mindset as an individual. You need to balance yourself out. You have to be conservative and be on point and have data and be honest. And then you also have to be a little, you know, flowery or whatever. You have to be, you know, pronounced.
Spontaneous, or
right.
figure out some other way of bringing life into
right.
the picture.
And you have to help the people who you're working with to feel a sense of happiness and a sense of urgency and a sense of you know, brotherhood or community. You know.
MashaAllah, this is very, very important lessons, and I'm taking a lot in. It's putting a lot in perspective for me. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. You know, going from the health and fitness to the deen, you know, business and just, you know, family life. You know, it puts a lot of things in perspective for me. Just trying to absorb all of it. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, along with our audience.
And we only have 1% that we actually share about ourselves. You know.
Right.
There's very many details, but
there's a lot of dimensions.
We get lost in the details, so the basics are okay.
Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. So to kind of conclude with the last round of questions, there's about 5 more steps that we're going to conclude with, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And these could be a little bit more rapid fire with, you know, a nutshell of explanation, inshallah. So what is the most important lesson you've learned in your life so far?
Okay. The most important thing is, for me, that I've learned, is how to approach your emotions with people, how to use your manners, to develop your manners, and when you have good characteristic, you have good manners, even people that may not like you in the beginning, or people that for some reason there's some type of kind of opponent, enemy kind of vibe, you know?
The battle of the ego.
Right. Because of your manners, you might see that person 5-10 years down the road, and you say hi, you show them so much respect, and you show them your good manners.
Yeah.
They're like, hey man, you know, like, it's been so long, like what I said back then I didn't mean,
Yeah.
and but why did I say it, or what you said, like when I said that, I wasn't complete in my perspective either. I just spoke out of emotion,
Yeah.
and so you spoke out of emotion in response. So you might have adversaries or people that you might think are your enemies, or people that are just like kind of normal.
Yeah.
But you need to be able to always see that person. You should never judge them. You should always be good mannered to them, even if they want to hurt you, or they want to emotionally they're just like they want to one up you or whatever. So control your emotions, and be careful not to say too much, and don't say too little. Because if you say too little, they don't know where you're coming from, and if you say too much, they're gonna assume that's who you are. That's what we're about. Or this is how it is, but it's not. It's somewhere in between.
That's a unique combination to put emotions and manners together, and then using that for positivity. I like it.
Yeah, because that
Very
person will
unique
always
combination.
come back to you because of that soft nature.
Yeah.
If you're harsh-hearted with them, there's only to be harsh, or to be actually it's never necessary. To be strong and disciplined is not harsh.
True. That's a very important lesson, and I think that's a lot for me to kind of use as well, mashallah, because you get to a point where you feel like somebody's done you wrong, and you're so close to just burning the bridges and telling them off.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if you're emotionally that high, and you change your manners and start acting negatively, it's not going to end well. So that's a unique combination, the most important lesson, mashallah. So your final message to our ummah. Basically, this is going to be your top 3 nasiha to individuals in our ummah. That could be a loved one, that could be everybody. Let's imagine, many years from now, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides to take you back, and you're leaving these 3 most important truths, you can call it, or life lessons that you would love people to share and use because you found it to be so true and so beneficial. And this is your final message.
Okay.
What would you say your top 3 nasiha would be?
I wish I thought about this more, but I can say one of those things is to never disconnect completely from anyone in your life that you may have known from a young age, in school, middle school, high school, college, university, whatever. If you have any way to reconnect with that person, if they're non-Muslim or they are Muslim, whatever, always try to reconnect with them, especially as a I'm talking about as a male. Maybe you have most of them are male co-workers or co-students or this or that. You want to keep relations with them, especially those among them that you respected for a certain quality, that you like, that you admire, and perhaps even those that you didn't respect so much, or they hurt you, Don't ever cut ties with anyone, because what it was once said, I would rather learn from a wise enemy than a foolish friend. So don't cut ties. If you can get in contact with people that you would like to have them over, treat them with respect, bring them into your home, feed them, and talk. Because you're going to learn, you're going to grow, whether it brings any benefits, in the dunya as far as physical and monetary or whatever benefits as far as co-working together again in some fashion. That's not what matters, because that's what we tend to think about. What can I gain from this this maneuver? What can I gain from introducing this person and back into my life or talking to them? What you're going to gain is the pleasure of Allah, because you are a Muslim and you are setting an example of, you are the one who is, it's a two-way street. All of us, we need to keep in touch with each other, for everyone. You can't blame someone because they never called you after a year or 2 years or 5 years. It's your responsibility too to try and get in contact with them. So keep in contact with people.
Keeping connections.
Keep the connections. Don't ever break the ties. That's number one.
Mashallah.
Number two I would say number 2.
What comes to mind?
I'm thinking about the people that you keep in your closest circle. The people that, because studies have shown that we really only have about 5 people that we call on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Almost every day or every other day, or at least a few times a week.
Yeah.
The people that are closest to us, they're in our first circle of influence and of relations. So of those 5 people, we're talking maybe outside of family, immediate family, like brothers and parents, right, and sisters.
Okay.
Let's say outside of that you have 5 other people.
Yeah.
In reality, I think most of us have perhaps 2 or 3 that we call regularly because we're close to them, as friends, and as brothers,
Yeah.
So think about those people, and as your life changes, you really need to consider your immediate circle and the circles beyond that, because in order to, nobody has thousands of friends, As we know, social media has given us an audience, but that's fine. An audience is fine for someone who's utilizing social media for the benefits of teaching a massive amount of audience, as a teacher, as a lecturer, as a coach, as a life coach. But as normal individuals, you can only maintain about 100 to 150, maybe 200 relationships that are actually well-formed and have meaning and purpose in your life. Beyond that, it just becomes, they have no relation to you other than mutual connections. So my point is think about your immediate circle, the 2 to 5 people that are closest to you,
Yeah.
in your, as brothers, your best friends, and think, okay, they're benefiting me because they are better for me because they call me to good and call me away from evil,
Yeah.
and say, okay, they are better than 1,000 people that are just out there, than 1,000 friends or associates or random people, because they call me to good and call me away from evil, and I have love and respect for them, and they do for me too. And then that close circle, have up to 5 people in there, and think
So
about
keep your close circle tight, and just have positive people.
What I mean is, this kind of ties in with the first point. When you maintain ties and connections with people,
Yeah.
if you look at the main circle, it might be that one of those people that you maintain ties with becomes in your main circle, or that they're in the secondary ripple, which might be the next 10 to 20 people,
Yeah.
right, of friends and associates, and then another ripple, which might be the other 40, 50, 60, 100 people.
Right.
So when you maintain those ties, you can adjust the people that are closest to you, because you never know who might go away from your main circle, and who might come into your main circle. But we have to be conscious of the friends that we choose, because as we know, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when someone asked him who is your best friend, after Aisha, radiyallahu anha, it was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, like immediately he knew, just from his heart, that is his closest friend, So we all have those people in our life. We have our, but we need to find people who remind us of the followers of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
Mashallah.
We need to pick those people for a beginning circle.
That's an important lesson. I really have to dig a little bit deeper into that myself, mashallah. And the third one?
And third, I would say, if you want to change your health and well-being, you want to transform your body, or you want to transform your life, you need to track, you need to keep some data, you need to write some things down. It doesn't mean you have to be like a literary scholar or a writer where you're writing in your journal every day, every day, once a day in your journal, because that becomes a little overwhelming. I think a lot of us have done that as a New Year's resolution, or just a resolution in general, where we're like, I'm going to keep a journal or a diary, and you try and you do it for the first few days, 2 days, 3 days, maybe a week, and then you give up because it's just not maybe natural for people to write down so many things all the time. But you do need to write down some of the goals that you have, mentally, physically, you know, business-wise, health-wise, and even other personal things about yourself. You need to write once in a while. When you're inspired, write some things down. You know, write down how you see yourself in the next 3 years. How you know, what is good for you in the next 3 years. What looks to be the worst situation. There was Jordan Peterson. He's a teacher, a professor from Canada, and he really kind of became very popular recently because of debates and things like that and laws that were being changed in Canada.
Yeah.
But he mentioned, no matter how much evil there is going on in the world, you need to look at yourself, even though you have been affected by evil from people closest to you and people far away. You need to take responsibility to be the nur and the light that you know, that you want to be in this world, you know, that Allah has given you. You need to feed that, and the only way you can feed that is by writing some things down. And when you keep a journal and you write in it maybe once a month or once every few months, you know, a few times a year even, you have solid foundation of some things that you can move towards, you know. And it can be mixed. Your journal doesn't have to be strictly about what happened to me today, what happened, you know, how did I feel about it, what events occurred. It can be anything, business ideas, things you want to change about yourself, whatever, you know. You can draw in there, you can do whatever you need to do, but have something. And when you're inspired and you're talking to your family and you're like, I want to change something, write it down. You know, what's the best situation for you in the next few years? How do you see yourself? You know, and what's the worst situation? What does your worst situation, your hell look like in this world, and what does your heaven look like in this world? You know, that's what Jordan Peterson mentioned. So my 3 things again to recap. Number 1, never disconnect from people entirely. You know, keep the connections. You know, strangers, people you barely knew, you know, through work or through school, and the people close to you. Never break connections. Number 2, think about the people closest to you, the people that are in your top 5, and are they setting an example that you love? Maybe there's something about them that they have such a good heart, and they're so joyous, they are full of joy, and they make you full of joy. That's great, because they're going to take you towards the path of Allah, you know, especially you know, as Muslims. So think about your 5, your immediate circle of people, immediate circle of influence, and think about those people kind of in the other rings of influence and how they might, you know, change and interact. You need to think about that, because that's the only way you're going to be able to lead, or only way you're going to be able to respect leaders. You know, we need to respect the people that lead us, and we need to take it upon ourselves to lead as well, you know, in our homes and in our communities. And number three,
I think it was mainly around tracking.
Keep data, track, and write things down. You know, whatever that is to you, write it down. As much as you are comfortable with and inspired to do. You know, so.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
So
never disconnect from people. Think about the people that you are with and that are with you, and track things.
For sure.
You need to track things.
That's the best way to kind of summarize our intellectual perspective of life that our brother Yussuf here shared with us, mashallah, so elegantly and so deeply and profoundly. So I truly appreciate that, mashallah. Jazakallah khair.
Why, yeah.
May Allah reward you.
And may Allah reward you. I appreciate you. You know, I appreciate the realness that you present and that you want, you know, from your work, you know, because it takes sacrifice. You have to be willing to do things at inconvenient times, you know, and you are putting the pieces together of people, you know, a community, and through your work, we are able to see one another in a more, you know, deep way, you know. Not all of us can sit together, you know, leaders in the community, or people who are just, you know, people who are just normal, or they're in this profession or that profession, or a student or whatever. But when they can see some detailed explanations of what they're going through and what goals they have, and how, you know, you ask them these questions that bring about these answers,
Yeah.
then we get to respect one another further.
For
we
sure.
get to understand one another, and we get to work towards common goals. You know.
Inshallah. I think that's a new purpose for me. I never really thought about it that way. Even though deep down inside I had a sense of it, but when you put it like that, it's amazing.
You're an ambassador for our community, mashallah.
Alhamdulillah. I appreciate the high regards. And this section of it would be the acknowledgement and gratitude. Before, we help people find ways to connect with you, and then ask you, what does Ridwanullah mean to you? For me, I would like to take the opportunity to acknowledge you and be grateful to you, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, I can't remember if it's Hadith al-Qudsi or just the regular Hadith, that whoever is not grateful to the people is not grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my acknowledgement of you is to say that I truly appreciate that you are a genuine friend. That's something that has always stood out to me. You're not hey, see you, you're that, how you doing, Hussein? How's your day? I truly appreciate that about you. And that's one thing I would like to acknowledge. The second thing is, I appreciate your intellectual aspect of life, right? Not too many people can dive deep into certain subject matters the way you do. So having that fresh perspective and not surface level information, I truly appreciate about you. The other thing I appreciate about you is just your welcoming personality. Like there's something about you that kind of brings a sense of peace that a lot of people don't have. They like to rush through things. I don't know why, but I appreciate just being present with you. You bring a sense of calm. I think you mentioned in that story about that lady that told you at the grocery store. She's dead on that. So Jazakallah khair for that. I appreciate the fact that you have good connections that we have together, and I appreciate and acknowledge your potential. I feel like this is the tip of the iceberg for you, that you have so many things that you could accomplish and so many things that you could do. And sometimes one way or the other, we don't truly realize what we like about somebody until it comes to fruition. Probably in a vision, I think that's the connection point that I see a lot of potential in you. That you could be doing so many amazing things that you've already done. Just magnifying that. So I just wanted to take the time to truly say Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate it.
And may Allah grant you better. And my vision or my perception of you, when we got to know each other about 5 years ago, one of the first things that you were inclined to do was to teach me, and among a few other youth as well. You brought us together, and for 10 minutes you wanted to teach us something that would benefit us, and you talked about, I wish I remembered, but you gave me advice. You told me about, what is correct, what is listening, what is, kind of not really listening, visually, keeping the eyes open, when you look at your teacher, your instructor, being aware and conscious instead of maybe like looking away or like, so using all of the senses, fully, hearing, seeing, and, feeling. So I appreciate your willingness to see the need for that, that not only amongst, not only do in our masjids and in our community do we need programs like teaching them like in Sunday school as we do here in the United States on Sundays, where they need to learn the basics of Islam, they need to learn perhaps the basics of Arabic and things like that. But you are coming from a perspective of you've seen both aspects, this culture and this society and the deen, that we kind of grow up in, we are exposed to. But you want to be a teacher and a coach to people, to encourage them, but to guide them, not to just encourage them and maybe put them in the wrong place. Because someone who is encouraged but not guided can end up hurting them further. And sometimes, you might lose respect, or you might, lose admiration for that person. You'll not see them in the same way, but you'll still love them.
Yeah.
But I appreciate that you are very caring and careful about the reality, that you're not shy to tell your students and to the people that you're coaching in your programs and in your life and in your day-to-day, that, hey, I see this good quality in you, but this is also, a reality too. There's some, it's a mixed bag, and here is the whole thing.
Yeah.
We need to know both parts, because with just knowing the good is encouragement, but knowing the mistakes and the bad is guidance. So, mashallah, I appreciate your wisdom in this area.
Jazakallah khair. I appreciate the opportunity to be speaking with you. Last few points, inshallah. How can people connect with you if they want to connect with you, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, for one reason or the other? Business relationships, personal relationships, whatever it may be.
So I recently decided to delete my Facebook account, which is something that a feature that they added, not too long ago. It used to be that you could only deactivate, and I chose to delete my Facebook. For me, I saw that there was benefit, and I was learning some things, but to me, the harm outweighed the benefit, because I felt like due to, the whole entire transaction of like friends and like, oh, are we really friends? And, should my list consist of everyone I know, which is like hundreds of people in this community? Like, am I really friends with you? Or am I really, am I really getting to know you? Or is this just kind of surface kind of stuff, So I said, you know what? I'm tired of people being hurt, in that sense for me, because I'm not the type of person to have, hundreds of friends, or 1,000 friends. I just feel it's not right. So sometimes if I trim around, I trim that friends list or whatever, I've hurt some people. And I apologize. I want to apologize to the people that may have been hurt by a simple, something that is immediately known, and we recognize it, but it does not represent, it represents nothing of our actual true relationship. It's just a tool that was used incorrectly, or it was, a decision because I have, different motives, or different, just because someone may not respond to you on social media, or their response is delayed, or they're not responding, or whatever, there's not a connection there. It doesn't mean that they don't like you, or it doesn't mean that there's evil or hatred or anything, or that, oh, I'm not, good enough. No, we're all okay. We're all mixed bags, but, so you can't contact me through Facebook, final point, right? But you can contact me basically. I do have, let's see, I don't have really any social media, but I do have a Google account and an email, which we can put in the link, so that you can see it down there. If you have any questions.
What is the tag, so we remember?
What is
What's
it?
the email address?
Gmail.
Like the address.
The whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll give you my old one, because I have two. Everyone needs a few email addresses, So the one I'm using, you know what? I should just give out the current one that I use more. So it's Yussuf Ibrahim .birdie@gmail.com. Birdie was a nickname that was given to me by family friends. I would ask too many questions to these two brothers, Ali and Muhammad were their name, mashallah. And
it's Yussuf, Y-U-S-S-U-F-I-B.
It's actually one S, Y-U-S-U-F, Ibrahim, I-B-R-A-H-I-M, .birdie, B-I-R-D-Y, @gmail.com.
Perfect.
So that's my email. That's one way to contact me, and perhaps the best way. And another one is, I currently live in Cottonwood Heights, Utah, and I go, the mosque, the masjid that I attend regularly is MCC, the community center.
It's just a few minutes from here, right?
Yes. So
it's very close. So
yeah.
You could probably catch him there, inshallah. Last question. What does Ridwanullah mean to you?
So technically, it means, to gain the pleasure of Allah through sacrifice and through serving You know what? What it means to me is it's very hard to be pure about your intention to serve Allah alone and to do acts for Him alone. I've never been able to understand and grasp that nature of being able to do that in any act. So I said, you know what? My approach is I'm doing it for self-interest, I'm doing it to the interest of the community, and I'm doing it for the interest of Allah. Because I can't take myself, I can't remove those different interests.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair.
Well, yeah.
Hey, what's up, man? So, Jazakallah khair, Yussuf, what would be the challenge for the audience?
Okay. I would say
It's going to be the unique challenge, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, for you to track down something in your life that's kind of been bugging you, one way or the other, so you can tell the difference between the reality versus what you thought it was and how you could bridge the gap. Leave your comment below on what you think that will be for you, and hopefully we can share some progress in the future, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So that's pretty much it. Jazakumullah khair, Brother Yussuf. I appreciate the opportunity and the time to interview you. I'm pretty sure we're going to be looking back at this and still learning a lot of lessons in the future.
you're right.
So just to kind of wrap this up, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, if you've liked this interview, please press the like button and make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the notification bell so you can join our Ridwanullah family. And don't forget to leave your comment below on what you thought about the video and the interview and on the challenge as well. And if you see someone who needs a different, more enriching intellectual perspective on life, share this interview with them. You never know, some of these elements could be a life-changing part of their life for them. So, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, share that with them. And I appreciate you guys tuning in to Ridwanullah TV, the Ridwanullah family. Hopefully it's growing, inshallah. As minimal as it may be, growth is better than no growth. So I really, really appreciate you guys' support. So Jazakumullah khair, Ridwanullah family, for tuning into another episode of Ridwanullah TV show, your source for Islamic personal and professional development. I'm your host and life maximizer, Hussein Mahmoud, working to help you maximize every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah by the grace, will, and for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Checking out by saying, never ever, ever give up on maximizing every single area of your life in this dunya and in the akhirah by the grace, will, and for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.